everyone. I'm Nikki Bussert. I am a chemical health specialist at the Youth Service Bureau. I work in 4 different middle schools within District 622 and District 834. There's been some interesting things going on in the media lately and within Minnesota regarding overdoses of youth, and a lot of that has to do with social media. So today we're just going to briefly talk about social media and drugs and how a lot of the youth are starting to get in contact with drug dealers and other people that have the means to get any kind of substance through social media. So.
All right, and I am Megan Hefner. I am also with Youth Service Bureau. I'm in the middle schools in District 833. And as you can see here, our contact information with the Youth Service Bureau, if you want to get in touch with us after this presentation, certainly do so. And we will just jump right in. So what we have learned is that 73% of people who report purchasing illegal drugs did so over social media apps. And the relationship between social media and drug use means the consumption of illegal substances is normalized and glamorized, and it also allows users and dealers to stay in touch. We've also learned that teenagers who regularly use social media were more likely to drink, use drugs, and buy tobacco than adolescents who either did not use social media or used it less. There's also this idea of what was referred to as perfection pressure. So that kind of means like everyone else is having more fun than you, which means teenagers will either, make a risky choice or use drugs or alcohol to self-medicate.
And I think that's a really important topic right now because of COVID and our distance learning. A lot of kids have been quarantined and staying home and trying to find other ways to self-medicate. And unfortunately, their phones are at their fingertips all the time, and they have these social media apps where they can get in touch with friends or drug dealers or whoever to buy these substances to self-medicate for their loneliness, their depression, their anxiety, their different array of emotions that they have maybe never felt before.
Yep, absolutely. And what we've also learned is that social media and smartphones are quicker and more efficient than methods of the past. Some have referred to using social media as like free advertising, and it's easier than other methods. And often it's safer than what's called street buy scenarios. Social media privacy settings, so what we use to keep our information private and confidential, this allows drug dealers to hide in plain sight.
I think a good example of this, Megan, is like when you and I were putting together this PowerPoint and I was on my school email and she was using one of her YSB emails and my name didn't pop up. It popped up as Anonymous Rhino, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it didn't come up with my name, even though it's under my name, my school email, but that was encrypted into this document as something else.
Yeah, it's kind of scary how it can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And another way that drug deals happen is that they use the term pharmacies as a code word to sell their products, and they use words such as like research, experimental, or not intended for human consumption as kind of a way around it. And oftentimes the people who are using these tend to be poor, poorly educated, unemployed, vulnerable, to believe the people and the products that they're selling. And of course, good news, no matter the encryption, digital dealings always leave a trail. So police can fortunately find them and try to shut them down.
So this is the main article that kind of triggered this conversation. I was watching the morning news and this article came up. Megan, if you want to play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Instagram post was heartbreaking. Dr. Laura Berman, famous for her love advice, writing, "My beautiful boy is gone, 16 years old, sheltering at home. A drug dealer connected with him on Snapchat and gave him fentanyl-laced Xanax, and he overdosed in his room."
I went into his room because we'd been talking about an internship for the summer that he wanted to do, and he was on the floor and gone. I'm so sorry.
Laura and her husband Sam say their son Sammy was a football player, a junior, looking forward to college. Do you think your son knew he was ordering fentanyl?
No way.
No. It's 50 to 100 times more potent than heroin. And I think it's particularly dangerous for kids who may be experimenting with something.
Deaths from fentanyl and other synthetic opioids increased 38% from May 2019 to May 2020.
There is a rash of kids like ours who, are home bored during the pandemic and, trying to entertain themselves.
The Bermans say Snapchat isn't doing enough to protect kids.
The big tech is not taking responsibility for helping the police find the dealer, and there's no excuse for it.
Snapchat expressed its deepest sympathies and said in part, "We are committed to working together with law enforcement in this case and in all instances where Snapchat is used for illegal purposes. We are constantly improving our technological capabilities to detect drug-related activity."
I was just saying to a girlfriend the other day that one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that I've had both of my teenage boys trapped in the house, safe. And I was wrong.
Speaking out through their pain, hoping to save others.
Okay. So one of the main things from that article, that news story, was about how Laura Berman talked about she was so happy that she had her 2 teenage kids locked in the house. However, that can be a double-edged sword because they're locked in the house with their family all the time. Now they're getting that anxiety, that depression, that loneliness. I need to get out and about. And in another news article that was about this story, talked about how their son actually got in touch with this drug dealer, and it was through Snapchat. And their son did tell a friend about it also. And it happened to be when he met up with the drug dealer on one of his walks around the neighborhood during a break during class. So when the kids are like, oh, I'm just going to go walk around the block really quick and then I'll be back just to get some fresh air. Not saying that you need to be hightailing it on your kids' route around the block all the time, but just to be aware of where they're going, if they're meeting anybody, if they look different when they come back in to the house after their walk around the block. So that was, I believe that was in California. Local cases, that this is not just happening in California and other states. This is happening right here in Minnesota too. So as of February 6th, police in Minnesota cities issued an alert about spike in drug overdoses, specifically to youth, 18 and younger or 22 and younger. There was a 16 and a 20-year-old in Roseville that had overdosed, and an 18 and 22-year-old in Rochester that had just overdosed. And during that February 6th to about February 10th, the police had used Naloxone multiple times within 2 days to revive people of overdoses. And they all have in common this Perk 30, that is a Percocet pain medication that has mixed with fentanyl. And fentanyl is the drug that they're overdosing on. Fentanyl is stronger than morphine. Fentanyl is obviously stronger than Percocet. And it's so potent that a little bit that goes into a youth's body or anybody's body can have deathly effects. And they've been using the naloxone, which reverses overdoses. And I read in another article that police officers have had to give multiple doses of naloxone. You don't just inject it once and then they're good. They might have to do it 2 or 3 times based on how much fentanyl or Percocet is in their system. And then these are just some quick data statistics that have been going on in Minnesota. The youth and misuse among youth. There's grade 11, 9, and 8. Obviously, we can see grade 11 has the highest for high schoolers, and then 25 to 34 also has the most ER visits due to an opiate overdose, which is fentanyl and that perk 30 that we were just talking about.
It's pretty scary and very relevant. So what we also know is that social media behavior can itself be addicting. Drug use changes the human brain over time, and so does the internet. As well as a fixation on validation through online platforms has been connected with depression and insomnia, both of which can lead to drug abuse of their own. And a really good video to talk about such topics is called Screenagers, and they also have a website as well that has a lot of good information on it.
And I know YSB has the rights to this film, so you can talk to Mary Guggisberg about getting this film if you'd like to see this film. It's really good. And kind of just going back on the drug use changes human brain over time, and social media behavior is addicting itself. So the addictive pathways in our brain, whether that's social media or eating or sex or drugs, it all has the same pathways. So if you're addicted to Percocets, you're probably going to be addicted to social media too, because the pathways are the exact same.
Yeah, that's really good note. So what do we do as parents, people who work with young people? We of course know that technology is inevitable. So what we need to do is to teach our kids how to be safe online. We can do this through, conversations and having relationships, but as well as doing our research and asking, people such as, phone providers, other parents, people who are tech savvy, about parental controls and how to protect our kids. Is really important. We want to set rules and expectations. We want to be transparent with our kids and keep that conversation open and ongoing, because this is going to be really important as we help our kids navigate through this digital world.
And that's very relevant with one of my students from one of my middle schools that I just met with today, got the okay to get their own TikTok account. And I said, okay, so what are the rules behind it? Are your parents checking it, or do you have to show them what you're posting? And he said there's two things that he has to do in order to keep his TikTok account is if his parents ever tell him that he's got to shut it down, log off, whatever, he has to do it and no argument, which is great. And the other one is to show his parents what he's posting and what he's doing. Because the parents aren't going to be able to get on their phone, the kid's phone, and look through their TikTok account and even know what the heck even how to get on it. So he is supposed to show them exactly where and what he's posting in order to keep his account going. So I think that's a fair thing too, as long as you have that trusting relationship that the kid is actually going to show you everything that they're posting. But if he wants to keep it, he knows that these are the rules.
Yep. And I've heard a lot of parents too creating contracts with their kids, setting the rules up together, signing it, making it official, and also talking about the consequences if things are violated in their use of these different social media platforms, and what would be the consequences of those, so they know ahead of time. So I think all that's really important, just to, like, as you mentioned, just keeping that conversation open and having really close relationships with our kids to be able to keep an eye on it.
Yep. And having all of, the consequences up front, if we see something on your TikTok account or your Instagram or your Snapchat that we don't like and we want to shut it down, that's what we're going to do. And having those consequences known up front, so there should be no discussion if that does happen. The
Right.
kids know what they did, and now they know the consequences.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So what's another step that parents can take is to really get familiar with the language our kids are using. And nowadays, because of texting, emojis are becoming a very frequent use of communication. And I actually just learned that emojis can now be used in court. So that was really interesting.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So obviously we know some of these emojis are going to be pretty obvious, like a pill or syringe, but some aren't so obvious. And one is, symbols such as the dashing away symbol. And so that's that first kind of cloud there. And that typically means like a puff of air, which could, mean vaping or something similar to that. We also see the dancing woman, which means, that somebody is ready to party. We have the spaceship emoji, which could indicate how high the potency of a drug is. And then lastly, we also have a plug, so like a connection or a drug dealer supplier for somebody where you can get drugs.
Well, and I just know, like, from when I was younger, like a drug dealer was also known as your plug. So using the plug emoji makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. And so as we dive a little bit deeper into all of these, we won't go through one by one, but and I also want to note that these, the language, the lingo, the slang, emojis, they're going to be changing all the time. And it's incredibly important to keep up, and it's incredibly hard to keep up. So just, as a parent, we're going to have to continually and constantly assess our kids and the language that they're using. And so, we have a chart here that kind of talks about some of those street or slang names that kids are using for different various drugs, as well as the associated emojis. And again, do your own research and continue to do it, and just keep note and keep track of what our kids are sending and receiving.
And I like, Megan, what you said about things are changing on a daily basis. So Megan and I are chemical health specialists. This is what our job is. This is what we do. We talk to kids about this stuff. And a lot of this was even surprising for us. So a lot of these emojis, I couldn't believe that a purple heart meant cough syrup, So if you guys ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask any chemical health specialist at YSB or in your school. Because if we don't know the answer, we want to find out. So we will do the research for you.
Absolutely. And kind of along with that, trying to decode emojis and decoding our kids' lingo, we also we know that texting is becoming a very savvy way of communicating about things that are not so good for our kids to be talking about and doing. And of course, there's so much more. And again, they're constantly changing. But I just wanted to point out these few because one, I think they're quite common, and also as they relate to using and dealing. So important things to know and to be aware of, and again, to continually check in for any changes and like that. And again, this doesn't necessarily come out just in texting, but in language, kids talking on the phone or in groups or in schools. These are kind of the common terminology that we find kids using, talking about, having a dealer, offering to use drugs, or kind of offering their supply, somebody who uses, somebody who's under the influence. So if a kid is over at a friend's house and comes home and talks about somebody being, loaded or sloshed or wasted, you can kind of use some of these terms to recognize maybe some things that they have been doing out of your sight. Nikki, I don't know, do you want to jump in and talk about the signs of substance use?
Absolutely. So some of the telltale signs of somebody that's using substances, physical signs, smell of substance on breath, body, or clothes, runny nose, hacking, cough, bloody nose, red, watery eyes, or dilated pupils. I think the dilated pupils is a big sign for prescription medications, which can be Percocets or oxycodones or Xanax, Valium. Change in eating habits, unexplained weight loss and weight gain, lack of grooming, and sleeping in class, which is hard right now to tell because of distance learning. But those are some of the big ones. You know, if you've noticed that your child has started some of that physical changes, maybe just have a conversation about some of the things that you're starting to notice. Behavioral signs, changes in academic performance, attendance, motivation, getting into trouble. Again, distance learning, we're in a whole different ballgame here with this. Changes in mood or behavior, lack of involvement in former interests, low energy, irritable, defensive. Again, they're a teenager, they probably have this 95% of the time, but if it's out of character. And then switching friends or peer groups, you know, again, this goes back to having those open conversations and knowing who your child is hanging out with. Why don't you talk to Allison anymore? Why don't you talk to Jane anymore? Having those relationships with your kids is going to really help to know about these behavioral signs.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that, you know, a lot of times when I've had conversations with parents, we talk about, you know, again, this is very typical teenage behavior a lot of times, but as you mentioned, if it's out of character or if you notice, you know, typically we say like if there's 3 or more signs, then we should be concerned. And I know this just popped into my head too when you had talked about the dilated pupils. I know a big one too that's specific to marijuana that if you can look at their eyes and they're shaking, that is a telltale sign of marijuana use too. So I thought that was just an interesting factor. An SRO told me that one time. So
yep,
good to know. And then, of course, along with the physical and behavioral changes that we recognize in our kids, a lot of paraphernalia is now looking very similar to what you would normally see on your child's desk or in their backpack. And so we have these cool kind of posters that were put together to help you kind of get to know what to look for. And as you can see, even just amongst like, you know, USB drives and things like that are e-devices. And among the Altoids, we have what looks probably like chewing tobacco. And so just to, you know, get familiar with what the different devices look now and be cognizant of what's in your child's room or in their backpack.
Yep. The vapes nowadays, I mean, they look like USBs. They're coming out with lipsticks. They came out with a sweatshirt that inside the hood, the strings are the actual vapes. So just, you know, if you're doing laundry and you see a sweatshirt that you've never seen before, maybe just check it out a little bit, see what it's all about. But they can disguise things really easy now, which is scary and sad.
And just another resource if you want to learn more about what to look for in regards to what drugs look like, what the paraphernalia looks like. This website is a really good resource to dive deeper into that.
Yep.
And Nikki kind of mentioned this. Do you want to talk about it a little bit more?
Yep. So Naloxone or Narcan is sometimes it's an injection, sometimes it's a nasal spray. It's a reversal for a drug overdose, specific for opiates. So I know for like myself, I have one that I carry around just in case. Paramedics, police officers, some of the SROs at the high schools and the middle schools also have one just in case. And that's not necessarily just because of the students. This could be a parent coming in and having an overdose, or somebody gets sick and you don't know if they're overdosing, they can give them the naloxone. If you give naloxone or Narcan to somebody that's not having an overdose, it does nothing. it's okay to do that. I know most of the ERs, if somebody comes in and they're not responsive or they don't know what's going on, they automatically give them the Narcan or the Naloxone, just to kind of gauge that and know, like, okay, they're not on drugs or they're not on opiates.
Sure. And it sounds like you can get these, at a pharmacy, or there's different programs that offer them out there for free as well.
Yeah. If you need some more information on that, just let us know and we can absolutely get you that.
Yeah. And this video right here just is another way to learn more about it and how it works. So we also know that there's a protective factor, a part of social media. And, that just means, kids are, unfortunately, but also good at the same time. They are spending less time face-to-face with peers, and they're spending more time on their phones looking at social media. So there is that less face-to-face peer pressure, which is good. But of course, we know all the negative effects that we just talked about as well. And in addition to, this less face-to-face peer pressure, is the opportunity to reach out to kids via social media. We know about the, Just Think Twice campaign, or about the influence. And now probably the most recently is Dr. Leslie, who's known as the TikTok doctor. And she offers information on TikTok related to, I think she does everything from marijuana to vaping and all that. And just a way to reach kids kind of where they're at.
And Dr. Leslie is from the U, right?
I think so.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
there's some really, really cool informational TikToks.
Yeah, it's a good way to reach kids and grab their attention. And so, as Nikki mentioned, if you have any questions or concerns about any of your kids or students or young people that you work with, certainly reach out to any of the chemical health specialists listed here. We're in 3 of the area school districts, middle school and high school. And in addition to being in the schools, we also have 3 offices in Stillwater, Cottage Grove, and Woodbury. So certainly reach out. There's other programs in the area, Canvas Health, Family Means, Family Innovations, all offering prevention and early intervention services. And of course, you can look to, at the resources that we have on our website. There's a really cool program called GOBI Support, which is an online intervention program, kind of that step before treatment, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, there's Hazelden that has some adolescent programs, as well as Nivon Wellness Center. So that's kind of it. Anything else that we should make sure that we cover?
Nope, I think that's great. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. This is what we do every day. And like I said, if we don't know the answer, we will find it out for you.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.